Evan Marshall stirred to the delicate strains of a string quartet, its ornate melody slicing through the tranquility of his Saturday morning at precisely 8:00 a.m. Blinking at the ceiling, he was baffled by the sophisticated notes drifting through his windows. It wasn't the crow of a rooster or the lowing of cattle, and it certainly wasn't from his trusty ranch tunes. A potent floral aroma, thick and synthetic like a department store's spring frenzy, assaulted his senses next. Evan bolted upright, eyes narrowing at the peculiar sunlight filtering through his bedroom window. He swung out of bed, donned his plaid shirt, and tugged on his boots, a dull throb already pulsing at his temples. Something was amiss. Stepping outside, Evan was blindsided by a spectacle rivaling a festival float. His meticulously maintained front yard, where he'd mowed, fenced, and nurtured the soil, was now a lavish wedding setup. Rows of pristine white chairs stood in flawless alignment, facing a grand arch draped in blush roses and silk ribbons. A massive crystal chandelier, inexplicably suspended from a makeshift beam, sparkled under the morning sun. Caterers in crisp, white coats darted between tables laden with champagne flutes, caviar, and towering shrimp displays. Evan's trusty smoker grill, sacred for ribs and brisket, was now a pedestal for dainty macaron trays. A wedding photographer, laden with lenses, knelt by his chicken coop, framing artistic shots of the pastoral scene. At the heart of the mayhem stood Karen Langford, unmistakable in her wide-brimmed white hat, wielding a tablet like a scepter. Her commands to a team adjusting the aisle runner were sharp enough to strip paint from a shed. As the HOA's vice president and self-anointed arbiter of neighborhood perfection, Karen had long sought to transform their rural enclave into a glossy suburban fantasy. Evan, staunchly outside the HOA's grip, had repeatedly told her to keep her regulations and meddling to herself. Boundaries, however, were not in Karen's vocabulary. Evan charged through the throng, sidestepping a startled violinist and nearly toppling over a child waving a bubble wand. Karen spun around, her smile radiant, as if they were at a garden party. "Evan, dear, isn't it enchanting? The Langfords are sparing no expense." Evan halted a foot away, his tone clipped. "Karen, what in blazes is this?" She feigned shock, tapping her tablet. "The HOA greenlit a community wedding. It's my nephew Bryce's big day, you know. His fiancé's family are major benefactors, and we needed a charming outdoor venue. Your yard was perfect. Idyllic, rustic, pure farm elegance." Evan gaped, wondering if she'd lost her grip on reality, or was simply that brazen. "This is my property. You have no authority to stage anything here, least of all without my say-so." Karen rolled her eyes, as if Evan were the one being difficult. "Oh, Evan, you weren't using it today. And technically, that 2007 property line issue was never fully settled, so there's a case for it being shared land." Evan's fists tightened. "Shared land? You've turned my backyard into a banquet hall, blocked my tractor route, and repurposed my grill for pastries. How is any of that reasonable?" She dismissed him with a breezy chuckle. "It's just one day. You're making a fuss." "Everyone's here now. It'd be mortifying to relocate. Think of the bride." Just then, the bride, Tiffany, glided over in a gown that could double as a pavilion. "You must be the landowner. Thank you so much for hosting our dream day. It's flawless!" Evan bit back a retort, wary of erupting. Then Bryce sauntered up, tall, smug, and already wilting in his tailored tux. "Hey, pal, thanks for the generosity. Hope the crowd's no bother. We squared everything with Karen for the venue and catering." Evan stared, incredulous. "You paid Karen for my land?" Bryce nodded, clapping Evan's shoulder like they were buddies. "Yeah, man. She said it was all sorted. My mom even tossed in extra for sprucing up the place." Evan stepped back, scanning his besieged lawn. Valets were parking cars on his feed trail. Someone had strung fairy lights on his scarecrow. A toddler was plucking eggs from the coop, stashing them in a basket. Labeled petals. His jaw tightened. Without a word, he pulled out his phone and strode to his porch. He dialed, waiting briefly. "Ben," he said when the line connected. "Open the back gate." A pause. "The pasture gate." Evan's gaze stayed fixed on the wedding. "All of them. Let them loose." Ben laughed. "Even Pancake?" "Especially Pancake," Evan confirmed, hanging up. He grabbed a lemonade from a cooler by his porch, savoring a long sip as the violins hit a soaring note. Caterers. Arranged shrimp skewers beside a chocolate fountain. A drone hummed above his shed, filming cinematic shots for the bride's montage. Karen posed before a sign proclaiming, "Love blossoms in Langford Meadows." Evan wiped his mouth, muttering, "They want a rustic wedding." "I'll make it unforgettable." He ambled to his porch swing, propped up his boots, and reclined as. A faint rumble stirred in the distance. A soft moo grew louder, then another. Guests glanced around, puzzled. A server by the barn dropped his tray, jaw slack. Over the horizon, Pancake emerged, regal, massive, leading a parade of curious, ravenous cows, trailed by goats, 2 geese, and a bewildered turkey. Evan grinned, sipping his drink. Here we go. The first hint of pandemonium was a chef's yelp. From his perch, Evan watched the white-coated man by the buffet fling his tongs skyward, retreating as if facing a specter. But it was no ghost. It was Pancake, Evan's burliest longhorn, striding through the yard with unshakable poise. The herd followed, a motley crew of cows oblivious to silk ribbons or petals. Guests barely registered the sight before the cows, plowed through the chairs, toppling them like pins. The aisle runner crumpled under hooves as people scrambled. One cow paused to sniff a flower girl's basket, then munched the roses. The girl squealed, tripping over her gown as she fled. Pancake zeroed in on the shrimp tower, toppling the table with a head swing. Glass shattered, food scattered, and the shellfish cascade collapsed. Marshmallow the goat vaulted into the fray, skidding across the cake table in a frosting-fueled glide. Guests shrieked, ducked, and bolted, some diving behind tables, others stumbling across the lawn. The bridesmaids cowered by a hedge watching. Cows devour favors and topple a champagne tower. Evan sipped his lemonade, unfazed, as if watching a matinee. The bride stood rooted, gaping at her ruined cake, now smeared on the grass and adorning Pancake's horn. One heel had snapped, tilting her like a storm-bent sapling. Bryce tried to guide her away, but Barbara the goose charged him, wings flapping, honking like a klaxon. Bryce's scream was raw, primal, as he swatted at her with a program. Unfazed, Barbara nipped his ankle, and he fled. Karen spun in circles, her hat lost, hair unraveling, voice cracking as she bellowed Evan's name. He waved, the picture of hospitality. "Looks like the VIPs have arrived, Karen." She stormed toward him, nearly slipping on a cucumber sandwich, and roared over the chaos. "Stop them, Evan!" "This is sabotage," Evan shrugged. "They're just stretching their legs. Free-range event, right?" A cow began nibbling her clipboard. Karen swatted at it, but the cow merely blinked and kept chewing. Another sneezed on the floral arch, sending tulle flying. The DJ, desperate, switched tracks, but Marshmallow's hooves on the mixer turned classical strings into warped techno, then static. Caterers abandoned ship, fleeing with salvaged trays, as a goat snatched a roll midair. A guest in a powder blue suit stepped back into a fresh cow pie, his wail a mix of anguish and betrayal. Another, filming the chaos, was bowled over by Barbara, who then dove into the decorative pond, splashing mud over centerpieces. The bride sobbed, mascara streaking, clutching her trampled bouquet. Bryce, limping, jabbed a finger at Karen. "You swore this was a secure venue," Karen faltered. "It was. I had it handled." Evan couldn't resist. "Handled? My goat's eating your dessert bar." The bride's parents emerged, the mother's heels stuck in mud, the father livid. "What is this madness?" he demanded. His wife pointed at Karen. "You claimed this was legal." Karen gestured wildly at Evan. "He unleashed them to ruin everything." Evan descended his porch steps, facing the muddy, frosting-smeared crowd. "Karen, I warned you this was my land. You trespassed, partied, and profited like you owned it. You ignored me, and now you're shocked the farm showed up. A cow dragged streamers like festive banners. Guests fled, cars honked, and a bridesmaid. Scaled a fence, toppling the beverage table in a sticky cider flood. Karen's shouts faded as the DJ bribed Marshmallow with a shrimp skewer. Ben, Evan's ranch hand, appeared, rake in one hand, soda in the other. "Need backup?" he asked. Evan shook his head. "Nope. Message delivered." The goose honked in solidarity. Sirens wailed in the distance, and Karen's eyes gleamed with desperate optimism. "Finally, the cops. They'll haul him away for this." Evan chuckled. "Can't wait to tell my side." As a patrol car rolled in, the pandemonium peaked. Evan stood serene, arms folded, watching his cows claim the satin and twinkling lights. For once, his plan was unfolding perfectly. The sirens crescendoed, and guests froze, craving rescue, while Karen gripped her tattered clipboard like a lifeline. The car halted by the ravaged floral arch. 2 officers stepped out, scanning the wreckage. Mud, frosting, trampled blooms, upturned tables, and cows lounging like idle revelers. One officer adjusted his sunglasses, the other pulled out a notepad, both stifling grins. Karen charged them, pointing at Evan like a detective revealing her culprit. "Officers, that man unleashed a herd on our wedding! He's wrecking everything and endangering everyone!" Deputy Kane, tall and composed, raised an eyebrow. He glanced at Evan, who stood by his porch, utterly unruffled. "Sir, is this your land?" Evan nodded. "Mine for 15 years. Deeded, fenced, paid for." The second officer jotted a note. Karen's face spasmed. "He's lying! This was HOA sanctioned." Kane turned to her. "Does the HOA own this property?" Karen faltered. "Well, no, but we had implied permission for community events. Evan should have offered it." Evan's voice was calm, deliberate. "I'm not in the HOA, never was. Told her that in writing, twice. This is private land, and nobody, including Karen, asked to use it." Karen's mouth flapped, wordless. "But the bride's family paid." Evan arched a brow. "Paid you, right?" The bride's father stepped up, brandishing his phone. "I've got the receipt. Karen Langford took $8,000 for venue fees, cleanup, and HOA coordination, none of which she had the right to promise." The officers exchanged looks, their demeanor sharpening. Kane nodded. "So, you collected fees for an event on land you didn't own, lease, or have permission to use," Karen stammered, words tripping over themselves. The second officer stepped forward. "We'll need you to come with us. You're looking at possible trespassing, unauthorized property use, and fraud charges." Gasps rippled through the dwindling crowd. The bride, mascara-streaked, looked shell-shocked. Bryce seemed ready to vanish into the limo. Karen made a final plea, sweating. "This is a mix-up. I did it for the community." Evan shook his head. "You did it for clout and control. You took cash, ignored boundaries, and pointed fingers." When it backfired, the officers escorted Karen to the patrol car. She twisted, glaring at Evan. "You'll pay for this! You've ruined it all!" Evan said nothing, watching the car door shut and the vehicle pull away. A goat bleated, as if editorializing. Guests began collecting their things, grumbling about refunds and stained attire. The bride, standing amid the ruined dance floor, wiped her face and faced Evan. "I'm sorry. We didn't know. Karen showed us fake paperwork. A lease agreement." Evan nodded. "No grudge, but next time, talk to the guy who owns the land." She sighed, barefoot, her parents trailing her. Bryce lingered, mumbling about damages, then scurried off, dodging a stray balloon. As the catering truck coughed to life, Evan surveyed the devastation. Streamers snagged on fences, wine bottles shattered under hoofprints, a cow napping on wedding favors. Barbara strutted, honking at random. Ben sidled up, hands pocketed, eyeing the wreckage. "Weirdest thing I've seen all week," And that's counting the tractor fire. Evan nodded. Could have been worse. Ben glanced at him. How? Evan smirked. They could have rented a petting zoo. They lingered, watching the sun sink behind the trees. The cows ambled back to the barn. Mission accomplished. Barbara pecked Evan's boot. Ben eyed the barn. Pressing charges? Evan shook his head. Law's got it. Her mess will haunt her more than I could. Ben nodded. Think she'll quit? Evan shrugged. Folks like her don't learn fast, but even thorns get trimmed eventually. His phone buzzed. A text from an HOA board member. Emergency meeting tonight. Karen's fate on the line. Evan chuckled, pocketing the phone. Looks like the neighborhood's taking out the garbage. As night fell and the last guests vanished down the gravel road, Evan felt a rare calm. His land, though battered, was his. His animals had their moment. And Karen, loud, overbearing Karen, had overreached. Tomorrow would bring chatter, emails, maybe news coverage. But tonight, he'd sit on his porch, sip lemonade, and watch the stars. Maybe he'd even keep Barbara from chasing the neighbor's dog again. Evan pulled into the community clubhouse as dusk settled, shadows stretching across the gravel lot. Normally a sleepy venue for bake sales or yoga, tonight it buzzed with tension. Cars jammed the entrance. Residents whispered in tight knots, and unease hung heavy. Evan nearly stayed outside, but curiosity won. He wasn't HOA, but that hardly mattered now. Inside, the air was stifling. Board members sat at a long table, faces stern. Karen, somehow present despite her arrest, looked drained. Hair limp, clothes creased, confidence cracked. Yet she sat rigid, clinging to her fading authority. The room hushed as the meeting began. Anne, older man with thinning hair and a stack of papers, cleared his throat. We're here to address yesterday's unauthorized wedding on Mr. Marshall's land. His tone was clipped, the accusation sharp. Karen tensed. Evan leaned against the back wall, arms crossed, reading the board's faces. Some weary, others seething, a few avoiding eye contact. The man pressed on. Ms. Langford, you're accused of forging a venue agreement, collecting illicit fees, endangering residents, and misusing HOA funds. Your response? Karen rose, clutching papers, her voice quavering but defiant. Everything I did was for the community's good. That wedding was meant to elevate us. Prestige, unity, the chaos, the animals. That wasn't my plan. She scanned for allies. None appeared. A woman in the front snorted. So the cows just wandered in? Funny, since you dodged Evan's calls all week. Karen's jaw tightened. Evan's always been obstructive. Evan smirked faintly. A man with glasses projected a spreadsheet. Karen, we have records. You pocketed thousands from the bride's family. Not a dime hit the community budget. You logged it as miscellaneous donations. Care to clarify? Karen floundered. I meant to reclassify it. It was temporary, another voice cut in. And the emergency maintenance fund? You drained it for wedding prep on land we don't own. Murmurs grew. The board piled on. Petty fines, absurd landscaping rules, unapproved dues hikes. The wedding was the breaking point, but resentment had simmered for years. Karen's hands shook. I did what was needed. You're all scapegoating me. An elderly man stood. We want someone who respects the law. You broke it, humiliated us, and lied. We're paying for it. Evan stayed silent, letting the wave crash. Karen tried to delay the vote. Let's review policies first. But the lead man cut her off. No, Karen, it's time. Hands rose, swift and nearly unanimous. One young board member abstained, looking regretful. Karen slumped, stunned. You can't. I built this HOA. It'll collapse without me. A woman at the table replied, without you, it might thrive. Evan stepped forward, heads turning. Karen's glare burned. You think you've won, she hissed. Evan shrugged. My cows think they won. I'm just along for the ride. The room chuckled, tension easing. Karen jabbed a finger. This is personal. You've always despised me. Evan met her gaze. I don't despise you. I despise what you did. Scaring folks over grass length and paint shades, treating my land like a public square. You don't care about community. You care about power. And it's gone. Karen paled. I'll fight this. I'll go to the city. Council. The lead man closed his folder. 1 week to vacate your role. Then your access to HOA accounts and records ends. Karen stormed out, the door slamming, windows rattling. A whisper broke the silence. About time. Evan nodded to the board. Thanks for cleaning house. The man with glasses smiled. You helped dust. Outside, residents clapped Evan's back or nodded thanks. One slipped him cookies, whispering, You earned these. The night air was crisp, quiet. Evan knew Karen wouldn't fade silently, but her reign was shattered, and the community saw her clearly. That sufficed for now. 3 days post-mayhem, Evan sensed normalcy creeping back. The barn was tidy, the lawn mostly free of wedding debris, and the cows seemed placid, their uprising spent. Pancake had claimed a trampled flower bed as his nap spot, like a conqueror guarding his spoils. Barbara the goose patrolled the yard, glaring at every passing truck or jogger. Evan found it oddly entertaining. He wasn't one for theatrics, but watching Karen's public unraveling at the HOA meeting felt like poetic justice. That afternoon, while greasing shed hinges, he heard an engine, a sleek silver sedan, tinted windows gleaming like something from a spy flick. It stopped at the gate, and Evan braced for the bride's father, perhaps with a lawsuit or a demand for lost cake. But the window lowered, revealing the bride herself, dressed in jeans and a plain top, a stark contrast to her prior bridal extravaganza. She carried a manila envelope and offered a tentative smile. Evan set down his wrench and approached. Afternoon. Here for the gift table? She gave a shy laugh. Not quite. Can I step in for a sec? He swung the gate open. She surveyed the tidied yard, cows grazing lazily in the distance. Looks different without streamers and smashed chairs. Evan grinned. Cows aren't big on sparkle. She nodded, exhaling. I owe you a real apology. You were right. We were fools to trust Karen blindly. I should have verified. My family should have known too. You didn't deserve that circus. Evan leaned on the fence. Appreciate you saying so. Most would have just vanished. She handed him the envelope. There's a check inside for damages. Dad's lawyer ballparked it. Might not cover everything, but it's a start. Evan took it, glancing briefly. Didn't have to, but thanks. She shrugged. Felt like I did. The wedding was a fiasco, and we made it worse by ignoring the red flags. Dad's still livid. He sued Karen yesterday. Fraud, misrepresentation, emotional distress, the lot. Evan's brows lifted. Emotional distress, she smirked. Apparently, goose attacks qualify. They chuckled, the air lightening. She turned to go, then paused. I don't know what'll happen to her, but thanks for holding your ground. Evan watched her drive off, dust swirling. He opened the envelope, whistling at the generous check. Enough for cleanup and maybe a new coop roof. Pocketing it, he headed to the barn, thinking some wedding guests weren't half bad. That evening, with the sun painting the fields gold, Evan sat on his porch, drink in hand. The cows were penned. Barbara napped on the steps, and a country ballad crackled on the radio, stitching the world back together. A text pinged from Sam, a newer HOA board member who'd always seemed uneasy around Karen. Karen's out for good. No roll, no votes, no funds. Done. Evan grinned, sending a thumbs up, his first emoji ever, and set the phone down. Word spread. Fast. Neighbors, some he hadn't spoken to in years, dropped by with pies, tools, or offers to fix wedding damage. One left a scotch bottle with a note. Thanks for your service. The community felt looser, friendlier, without Karen's grip, on fence hues or mailbox sizes. Evan didn't care for HOA drama, but even he felt the shift. Calmer, warmer, more like neighbors. Then, on a crisp Thursday morning, while checking chicken feed, Evan spotted a crowd at his front fence. Older residents, board members, and unfamiliar. Faces armed with papers, folders, and a makeshift podium. He approached, wiping his hands. Another unannounced shindig? Sam stepped up, grinning. Not exactly. We've got a proposal. Evan raised a brow. What kind? Sam glanced at the group, then said, We want you on the HOA, not just as a member, but as interim president. Just till we steady the ship. You've got the community's respect, good sense, and frankly, you're the only one who ever spooked Karen. Evan stared, then burst out laughing. You want me to lead the same HOA that tried to fine me for tall corn 3 years back? An older woman piped up. That was Karen. We scrapped that rule yesterday. Evan scanned their eager faces, then sighed. All right, I'll sit in on some meetings. No guarantees, but if anyone bans chickens, I'm out. The crowd erupted, in cheers, clapping, promising treats and brief agendas. Evan smiled, shook hands, and strolled back to the porch, a bit more bounce in his stride. That night, Barbara flapped her wings and settled beside him as he gazed at the tranquil yard. No, tense, no chaos, no hidden vial.